Well, I was born in Tuscany, Alabama in 1937, March the 5th, 1937. And my dad's name David Macon Moore, and my mother was Martha Sue Driver Moore. And when I was very small, we lived on the mountains. And on this mountain, there was only 3 houses, and me and my brother was the only 2 kids on that. So we had to find our own recreation, to do. So we had a pet, Benny hen that was our pet. Each one of us had a Benny hen. It had a string around its neck, and it'd go wherever we'd go, the Benny hen. And then we'd climb trees to the very tip top, and we would hand walk from its older from one tree to the other. And we used, and the wasn't dirt up there, it was clay. The soil was like clay. So we would dig that up and we would make figures out of that. That was our recreation, But I should have went back even before that. I don't remember this, but, and my mom never told me this because she would cry every time that anybody would tell it. But when Buddy was born, all the neighbors, they had a gathering to see the new baby, and Mom put me in a high chair next to the stove, and they had gotten a great big coffee urn, and I had these long legs I inherited from my daddy, even as a baby, and I somehow took my leg over there and pulled that over on top of me, so I was scalded from my neck all the way down, all the way across, and on my arm, and on my arm. And they said in the hospital I would not let anybody touch me or come around me but my mom Moore and my Aunt Jen. Not my daddy, not my mama. I don't know why, But anyway, they said that's where I was. And they said I was in there a long time because you have to take one layer off another, I was, it's got 22 months difference in us. I was 24 months old. And so you can tell by that I was, I was me, I guess. But anyway, about the mountains, we loved it. It was a old nightclub. It had been a nightclub, real fancy with fancy chandeliers. And my dad, my granddad, my uncle owned a block factory. And so Dad bought that house up on that hill, and it had been renovated, and it was beautiful. And we would ride our tricycles around on the inside of it, but yet we wouldn't be in the house, because it had a block wall going around it. Well, my mom Moore, I was like her, kind of like Jamie was with me, She had other grandkids, but I was Ma's grandbaby, And so from the time I was 5 years old, Mom would put me on the Greyhound bus, and the driver would drive me from Tuscany to Phil Campbell, and then my grandmama would meet at the end of the road. She'd get me, and I would go and I would spend the week with them, and I loved it. And then on the other side of the family was my granddaddy Driver. Now, my grandmother had been bedridden since she was, I guess, before I was even born, and she was either in the bed or in a rocking chair all the time. Well, anyway, when we lived on the mountains, when I started school, they had the outhouses. I told my mom that the little boys was peeking in the back of the outhouses, when the girls, they would take girls down there and then they'd take the boys. Well, the little boys was peeking in there. I told Mom, and Mom told Dad. Immediately, the Greyhound bus became my place to go to school. They changed me to Tuscany, Alabama. And my grandfather was retired from a railroad. He was an engineer. And so Mom would put me on the bus, and and I'd go, and my grandfather would meet me, and he would walk me into the schoolhouse, And then when I got out of school, he would meet me and take my hand, and we'd go back to their house in Tuscany, which is the same house that my mom and all her family was born in. My cousin has it now. It's a really, really, really nice house. But anyway, that I would sit in his lap, and at the fireplace, he would put the popcorn and oil in there, and he'd pop that popcorn, and we would sit and eat popcorn and listen to the radio with my grandmother. And then also he would churn butter, and then we would get to eat the butter when he got through turning it off of the top. That's things the kids don't get to do nowadays, And also, my aunt did not like for him to go in the kitchen. She liked to stay neat. So it was his house, but my aunt still, she lived there. And so he would take a coffee can and put eggs in it and sit in the fireplace and let them boil eggs in the fireplace, and we'd crack them open and eat them for snacks. And I loved him to death. But he passed away when I was 11 years old. But from the time I was 5 on, every year he would take a trip to Iuka, Mississippi, where he was born, where his brothers sisters was, and we would go on. We would get on the train, and he would let me off at his nephew's house, who owned a feed store uptown, and his kids was older, like teenagers, had 2 of them, and I was little, and they had maids, which I never heard of, but anyway, they petted me to death, really did, and we did that every year until the year he passed away. When I was 11, this last time we got to go, and he passed away when I was 11, but we made that trip every year. Had lots of fun memories just in that short time of my granddaddy driver. My granddaddy mower had a problem, and he worked real hard. He was a master bricklayer. And he'd come home and he'd sleep, and when he'd wake up, he would sing folk songs. Now, I've got all of them copied down, and Ricky Haywood can sing every last one of them. And when Ricky Haywood calls me, he ends it with one of them songs. Isn't that funny? But, and then my mom, like I said, she spoiled me to death. For the mountains, I probably should tell you too much, because me and Buddy Gail says was mean as snakes, because Dad traveled, on kind of the factory, And so Mom was up there with me and Buddy, and me and Buddy would, if we did something she didn't like, we would climb up on top of the chicken roof, and Mama would say, "Come down, come down." Well, there's 22 months difference in me and Buddy, who's David Ronald, but we called him Buddy, and I called him my buddy, always. And because he was my buddy, that's all there was up there. And as I say, we're full of mischief, really full. And like I said, my sister Gail says, if Mom had had if she had had us, she would never had any more. She wouldn't have no more kids. That me and Buddy would have been enough, because we were so full of ourselves. But anyway, that was my buddy. We did everything together. He was always a leader. 22 months younger, but he was a leader, and I was a follower. Because he learned about the bicycle first. He taught me how. He did the roller skate first, and he taught me how. I guess I wanted to stay a baby or something. and so I let him teach me all that stuff. But then after my buddy, there was Billy Bob. And Billy Bob was real quiet. He was like 7 years younger than me. And really and truly, me and Buddy, everything we did together, and we just left Bill out, and it made me feel so bad later on, you know. But 7 years, you know, yeah. And then it takes them to grow up to you, then you're all close, you know. Then there come Gail. She was 10 years younger than me, and pretty, oh Lord, so pretty, blonde curly hair, you know, little plump girl. And we called her Miss Priss because everywhere she walked, she shook, you know. So that was Gail. So there was me and Buddy and Billy and Gail, and then Kenny Ray. And when we had Kenny Ray, well, we lived in Tuscany, Alabama, when everybody except me and Buddy was born. And then when Mama had Kenny Ray, we did not even know Mama was expecting, and she didn't tell me and Buddy. And we came home for lunch every day because we only lived 3 blocks from the schoolhouse. So we would run home for lunch to eat, you know. We came home for lunch one day, and Mama didn't have our food on the table. And we weren't allowed to use the telephone back then because 4-party lines. Kids won. I called my grandmother, where's Mama? She was in the hospital, had your baby. Freaked me and Buddy out, you know. Absolutely freaked us out. And Daddy came to the junior high, at high school, at junior high, and he got me and he got Buddy and said, I'll take you to see the new baby. And I looked at Kenny Ray and I said, it don't look like a baby to me, it looks like a monkey. So to this day, on his birthday, if I can find a monkey, he always gets a monkey of some kind. Because he had so much hair on him. But now our grandfather driver had a lot of hair, you know, like that on the chest and arms, like Kenny. And Kenny had, I mean, we looked like a monkey to me. Anyway, I was so embarrassed. At 14, I was so embarrassed that Mama had had a baby. But then we moved down here to Columbia, Tennessee. Kenny was 10 months old, and Mama said, Daddy's working out of town. I got these other kids to take care of. You have got to take care of Kenny because you're the oldest. So to this day, I say Mama gave me Kenny. She loved him to death, and she spoiled him to death. But everywhere I went, he had to go. When I was dating me and Bobby, I never dated nobody except Bobby Joe. And when we was dating, we had to take him with us. And Mama would say, if she kisses her or holds her hand, you tell me, Kenny, because she'll be in trouble. And we could be out sitting on the porch, and he stood hold my hand, and Kenny hold, Mama, he's holding her hand. And Mama would say, go home, Bobby Haywood, right now, because he just lived right down the street, you know. So that was my Kenny. And then when Kay came, I already had 2 kids. She's 20 years younger. So Kay was always just our baby sister, but now she's 64, and so we're all old people. I mean, you know, we finally all caught up with each other. But that's my siblings. I don't think I left any of them out. My dad had been supervisor over the bricklayers at the carbon company here in Columbia for a long time. Well, and for 10 years, he had stayed down here in Columbia all week and then came home on weekends. So he always wanted Mom to, you know, to move here. But Mom's family was a very close-knit family, and they lived real close together, you know. She had 2 sisters, and her mom and dad there, her her brother was an Army career man, so he was out of the picture. But they were all always together. And like I said, my grandmother, she was what you call bedridden. She was either in a chair or in a bed, you know. So it was real hard for her to decide to move to Columbia, you know. But Dad finally talked her into it, you know. And he told her he'd buy her new everything, you know, a new house, new furniture, new everything, if she would move to Columbia. Because we was renting down there. And he did, and we moved here. And that's how we got to Columbia, Tennessee. And I squalled all the way up here, all the way from Alabama down here. I squalled. I said, I want to live with my Aunt Jen. I want to live with my grandmother. I want to live with my Aunt Jen. I said, I'm 14 years old now, mind you. Squalling up a storm, I didn't want to move. And it was a culture shock, because the school we went in had no cafeteria. You took your lunch or you walked home. You had no gym, no physical ed, no gym clothes, and you had to pull your clothes off in front of all them people in there. I had never done that. That was terrible. To me, that was terrible. You had to put them gym clothes on, you know. So I found this kind of plump girl, made friends with her, and I'd get in behind her. It was like a culture shock, you know, just from Alabama to Tennessee. There's that much difference. And then Bobby Joe, well, like I said, he lived right down the street from me, around the curve, about like 5 houses down. And he'd get off the bus from football practice, and he'd come loping down through there, and he was 16, I was 14. And he would sit on the porch and we'd sit and talk and watch Kenny Ray, keeping him from getting in a road, getting run over. And Mama would come and say, well, you can sit in the porch. You are not to hold her hand. You're not, you can talk, that's all. And so if he happened to hold my hand, and Kenny would tell, and Mama would say, go home right now. And he would go home right now. So then she wouldn't let me date till I was 16, but he could sit on the porch in the daytime. That's how we met, and that's how we fell in love. Actually, I think it was probably kids, but it was like love. I mean, just knew there would never be nobody but the two of us. And honest to Pete, I really thought that, you know, that probably we would all leave at the same time. That didn't happen. But that's how we met. And he was from a family of 11. His dad had got married when he was 16, and when he was 18, he divorced. He had one boy. And then a few years later, he married Mama. That was May Reeve, and she had 10. And Bobby's the third of the 10. And they lived in a 4-room house, 1 bathroom. And he said, you never know what sleeping is till you slept with 6 in the bed with feet in your face, because so many, it's one in the iron beds. Well, I didn't have to do that. I had my own room. I had my own bed. Well, they was very, very poor for one thing, because they had so many kids, and his dad worked for the sheriff's department as he was. They had back then a chain gang, and the prisoners had chains on them with a ball, and they would take them out in a truck, and they would clean up the communities, and that was Papa's job, you know. So I'm sure it wasn't a good. I'm sure it wasn't a high-paid job, but I'm sure it didn't take care of that many kids anyway. And they lived in Blacktown, and back then there was white towns and black towns. They didn't mix, you know. Blacks and whites did not mix. But they had a house in Blacktown, And he claimed the reason he learned how to run so fast is because the blacks would run after him, and he would chuck rocks at them, and they would chuck rocks at him. Probably the truth. And his dad had this place built out back when the boys got older, and the boys had bunkhouses in there, and they slept in this little place out back, but they came into the other house, to eat and everything. And then they lived there until I guess he was 15, whenever that finally Papa was able to get him out of Blacktown. So he had a poor, and he worked since he was 12 years old. All the boys had to, and they did roofing, And so he started smoking when he was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. That's probably what got his lungs all those years too, But the boys had to work, and they gave them money, had to put money on, the house. But when they got old enough to date, they could keep $5. Well, let's see. I don't really remember how old he was this first time, but anyway, he didn't have a car, but he had a friend that had a car. And at the carbon plant, they was hiring the young men to put soot in the buckets to go up in the summertime, make money. So my dad was working there. Well, that's how we got caught. But anyway, we decided we was going to get married. So I put my clothes out the window. He picked them up. His friend carried him. We carried him over to Mammy Reeves, who was his grandmother. And she loved me to death, and him too. But anyway, she was Mammy with a bad eye. And I got all dressed up. He come in, he was all dressed up. And lo and behold, we started out, and here come my dad and his dad. And they was not even friends, mind you. And they came in there and said, "Go home right now, and you're not going to see him no more." And that didn't work, that wasn't going to work. So next year, the next year we tried again. This time we made it all the way to Alabama. It was headed for Iuka, Mississippi. You could get married from 14 on up. No license, no blood test, no nothing. You just go get married. Okay, we made it all the way to Alabama. We stopped at a service station to get us a grape drink and peanuts. And lo and behold, here was my dad and Papa. And they was mad. My dad said, "Get in this truck right now, girl." And Papa was in his car. He put Bob in that car. We come home, my mom and Papa, my mama and my daddy, and his mom and his daddy all set us down and said, "You're not going to do this again. Do you understand me?" We said, "Yeah." But anyway, so we finally did get married. I like 1 month, maybe 2 months of being 18, and he was 19. So, And we knew just from the first it was just going to be us. It wasn't no big one, I guarantee you. It was the preacher who was a fan of Bobby's, football fan, but he was a pastor at Riverside Methodist Church, and his name was Ben Alexander, and him and his wife, and Mama and Papa, and Mama and Daddy, and one of his brothers and sisters, and a friend. That's all. We just went to church house and just we didn't have, not like y'all had. We didn't have an all out thing. We just went to church house and got married. But that group was there, and then we went to the I think what it's called. Well, it was Nolan's Barbecue turned into it, but back then I think it was like a bus station, and we went in there and we ate grape drinks and ate peanuts and and that's how we celebrated it. Well, my dad was a Baptist, but I never knew my dad to go to church, but he did when he was a kid, you know, of course, because his mama had him too. But my mom was a faithful church member, you know, and she raised us kids in church. And back then it was called christened. When you was a baby, you was christened and you was put on a cradle roll, which was a board hanging down, and put the baby's name on there and when it was born. So I was raised in the church, and I always, you know, I always went to church, and I guess through Mom and through my grandfather driver, I always sit with him until he passed away, but now we went to the First Methodist Church in Tuscany, Alabama. Then right behind us was the Baptist Church, and when I got to be about 12 years old, well, they had a youth group. We didn't have a youth group, but they had a lot of young people, and we didn't have so many young people. So I would go into church, and the Sunday school, and I would go in there and go through the back door and go into the other, and I would go to the Baptist youth bunch. Then I'd come back by, and when my mom come in, I was always in her church. Kind of sneaky, but that's how I found out about the Baptist church, you know. But then I guess I was, well, let's say, well, through Mom, we always knew about the Bible, and we always knew about God. We always knew about Christian songs, things like that, you know, through my mom, who was Grandmother Moore. Everybody loved Grandmother Moore. And I was 14 whenever the St. Luke Methodist Church, we had no church here on Santa Fe Pike, and a tent came up, great big circus tent, and big sign said you're welcome. Church services time from and to time. It's a revival. Well, me and all my brothers and sisters, you know, we went every night, and all of them. And at the end of 2 weeks, the pastor said, "Who wants to come up, you know, and talk with me? You know, we have no church here, you know, but I'm not asking you to come up to join a church, but to talk about if you'd like to have a church in this area." And so everybody that went up there, then I'm a charter member, you know, there's 14 of us. And the 3 downtown churches sponsored it. They paid for us to get this little old bitty church, New Hope. Went over there, and I started teaching Sunday school over there. And I was baptized then. And it was Sal Mill. It was at a mill. And back then, the people from the church would come with you, and they put you in the water, and they would sing songs to you. You know, it was really good. But I don't know. I guess I was just brought up in church. And at St. Luke, I taught for 16 years in Sunday school class, and then my mom told me it's time I got out of there and got into her class. And so I did. My sister Gail took over for another 16 years. But I guess that's my faith. I always knew there was a God. I always believed there was a God. I wasn't nobody's angel, that's for sure, but I wasn't bad either. You know, That was me. We was New Hope Methodist Church. New because we was new. There was no church anywhere in that whole district, whole area. No denomination, nothing. So we were new, so we named it New. And I was only 14, but I was part of the group, you know. And then we named it Hope because we had a hope that we would develop and that we would be able to have a church and that we would grow. So we was New Hope. And that little church is still up there, and but it's been a non-denomination church, I think, now. I'm not sure what it is, but it is a church of some kind now. But anyway, it's a little bitty church. Well, we went around, the 14 of us and the pastor, which he had a service downtown, you know, a church downtown, and then we was his secondary church. We went around house to house, all over that whole area, knocking on the door and say, you know, we have a new church, and we have service at so-and-so time, and we sure would like to see you there. And that's all we'd say. And we'd go from house to house. Some people listened, some didn't. But it didn't take long till that little church was full. You could not get another person in that little church, not at all. So the First Methodist Church downtown, which of course they had, you know, money, you know, within their church, they was able to help us to buy the land across the street where St. Luke is. It's not really across the street, but it's across the street and down the road. So we bought that land. And your granddaddy did a lot of volunteer work on it. A lot of people did, though. We did a lot of paid people, too. But we started out in the basement. We just had a basement part. And then we added Sunday school rooms, and then finally we got our sanctuary. And your granddaddy built that white brick wall, that beautiful white wall. Well, him and my brother Billy Bob did that, and my son Joey, Bobby Joe, was apprentice boy. And he allowed him to lay 3 brick on it. And if you're a bricklayer, you can look at it, you can find his 3 brick. If you're not, you won't know it. But you can tell it. But then he was the helper from then on to build that. I think it's so pretty. And then our best friend, Ed Pitts and Otto Shoup, they built that cross. All volunteer, everything volunteer. So that's how we got our St. Luke Church. The New had been completed, and the Hope had been completed. You know, that the whole group met together that had joined the church by then over in New Hope, you know, which I don't remember how many it was, but it was a lot. But anyway, they decided, well, it's been done, you know. The New is done, the Hope is done. Now we need a new name, so St. Luke became St. Luke. That's how the 2 churches. My mom's a charter member. I'm a charter member. My buddy is a charter member. My brother Billy Bob is a charter member. When we got married, we lived on Hatcher Lane, in a 2-story house. Had three apartments upstairs, 2 downstairs, 1 bathroom centered in the middle of the upstairs, and we all had, that bathroom was for all of us. You know, you had to take your towels and your toilet paper back and forth with you. And you had to keep your door open in the summertime because the only air was a huge fan like this at the end of the hall, and it would blow down through there. Well, me and Bobby, we had the biggest apartment, which was a bedroom, a living room, and a kitchen. And the rest of them was what was called like a studio room, like had a bedroom. And my buddy lived up there. He got married 2 years after. He was 16 when he got married. he made it to Iuka, Mississippi. How he made it and we didn't, I don't know. But and Norma was 14, but they made it. And they was married a long time, you know. They passed away not too long ago, you know. She left him 3 months after he died. She just followed him. And all my family said they thought I would follow Bobby. But I reckon good Lord thought I need to stay here to take care of the kids. Nobody was here but Chris Hall only had one. Joey was a baby, and well, that's where we lived when Joey was born, in fact. And then we lived up there when I was expecting the second baby, and Bobby got afraid that I'd fall down them steps because they had 2 ways of going down. You could go down and go into the apartment house, or you went down. And it was high, real high steps, and he was afraid I'd fall. So we moved over to Riverside, next door to the Riverside Church, into a house that the church owned, you know. And we lived there until that's when I lost my second one, and then we lived there when Ricky was born. And then the church bought the little house and tore it down where they could expand, you know. So then we moved to 4th Avenue in Riverside. Riverside was a good place to live then. I guess it is now too. But then he decided we needed to buy instead of rent because, you know, well, when he was traveling, when he was in the wintertime, before he went to work at the carbon plant, he had to travel to work, you know, like sometimes it'd be Florida. In the wintertime, they'd have to go to Florida to work, do brick work, because you can't do brick work here in the wintertime, you know. And, yeah, he decided we need to buy or build a house. So we bought this little house called Royal Oaks, and it was on top of a hill, but it wasn't no high hill like Tuscany Mountains. We was on a hill. This was just a hill. But there was 3 houses on top of that hill too, and that's where Teeper was born. And it was just it was a little 4-room house. The rooms was real big back then. You know, they were square and real big. But then when Joe and Ricky got old enough to start fighting, they fought like cat and dogs. And, I mean, they loved each other, but they still had these fights. And Bobby said, we got to get a bigger house. You know, we got to separate them boys. So he bought this lot over here, and we were the 5th house in this whole subdivision. Even this big old subdivision behind us wasn't even here. So he had the choice of anyone. He bought this lot here because it had like a 1/4 acre bigger, not much. But that's how we ended up here. Well, no, your papa, him and the bricklayers at the carbon plant. Like I said, my dad had been supervisor over there, and he was real close to a lot of the men. He was still working there. And then your papa, when he started to work out there, well, then he made friends with a whole lot of close friends, a lot of them, and they just, after work and on weekends, they just worked on this house. And the reason why, if you look real good, it's the bricks, there's fossils all in it. It's got like raccoon prints in it, and it's got leaves, fossils all in it. And everybody said, why did you choose such an ugly brick? And he said, because I think it's unique and pretty, and it's different. But no, he never had to pay no labor. And Joey and Ricky and Teeper was only 5 years old, but Teeper can tell you he handed up a many a brick, you know, with those 3 boys, and all the boys lived up the street from us. They were the same age as Joe and Ricky, which they was like 12, 10 and 12. But they'd come up. It was fun for them. But we didn't have to pay no labor as far as brickwork. Putting out, of course, all the other. And then our friend Ed Pitts, he was a carpenter, and he did a lot of the woodwork. And in turn, Bobby did a lot of woodwork for him. So they switched out, well, favors, I guess you'd call it. And then his brother Harold was an electrician. He's the one that did the electric work in it. So, yeah, it's a house built for love. Bobby said, I'm buying it for you and for our boys. Yeah. And he didn't realize we was going to have like 45 more of them, or at that time, Well, starting out, our only job was to raise the boys, But I always had I always thought I would like to be a cosmetologist, to fix hair. And I was in my early 30s, and Bobby said to me, well, if you've always wanted to do it, I think you should give it a try, and see. So we hired this lady to come to the house to take care of the boys. And before that, though, I had a real serious operation, and we had hired this cuddle lady to take, that's Tiber's Judy. I know y'all heard of Judy and Walter. So Judy stayed there with the boys, and I went to school after I got well, And I've become a cosmetologist, and I loved it. And I was it for like 8 years. And Ricky Haywood called me at the beauty shop, and he said, Mama, there's a thing on TV about people in foster care. I said, I never heard of such. He said, well, they say they need people to take care of these kids that need a home. And he said, Joey was 17. He went off to Alabama. He went to Alabama to college, he went to Alabama to college for 1 year. And then he decided it wasn't for him. But anyway, he said, Joey's gone, and in 2 years I'm going to be gone, and you always said you wanted to have 4 kids. He said, Mama, you think about it, you might want to do that. No, I'm a cosmetologist, and I got you boys in the evening. When too long later, Rick called me again. He said, Mom, it's on they keep it on there every day, needing homes, foster care. So me and Bobby talked about it. We said, well, we'll go down there and find out what it's all about. We knew nothing about anything like that. So we went down there, and she told us they'd have to do a 6-month study. They would interview your neighbors, your pastor, look into you for 6 months, and if you was approved within 6 months, you could have a child. She said, what would be your preference? I said, 1 year old. That's all, 1 year old. Well, at the end of 6 months, she come knocking on my door with this little red-headed boy, and he said, just call me Slick. And he came in here and kicked Tiber's tongue, and Tiber whopped him in the nose, and the blood started coming down. And she said, well, do you want to keep him, or do you want me to take him back to the orphan's home? And I said, well, we'll keep him. If he needs us, if this kid needs us, but oh boy, that boy, he wasn't bad, but oh Lordy, he could tear up Jack, And him and Tiber fought like cats and dogs. And Pawpaw would make them hold hands up in the air, and he'd take a belt, and he'd whoop him at the same time, go in a circle, and they'd say, oh. So that was David, yeah. He was our first one. So anyway, so he was 7, and I told her, that's all, that's going to be it. Well, then, here she come calling me up. Again, she said, we got this teenage boy. He's from a professional family. His mom and dad are both professors, mind you, at a college here. But they had divorced. The boy had sliced his mom or something, and she had took a fork, like a two-pronged fork, and stuck it through his arm. And the neighbor had called Human Services. And so we got him. That was our Spike. Up there. And his thing was, don't touch me. He didn't want nobody to touch him. Just don't touch me. So when I would pass by him, I would just do a little bit like this, or pay him back just a little bit, just to get him past that point. But it's a long tale, you couldn't get this on there, but we had already your granddad had already paid for us to go to Florida to Disney World, but Norma had already was going to meet us there. They was in service, but them and their kids was going to meet us there. And we had David, and he was, like I told you, wild. And then here was Spike, don't touch me. And there was Mama, and we was all grieving over Papa, but the trip was paid for, so your dad said, we're going to go anyway. We all got in the car, squeezed in there, and all the way down there, we heard, he's touching me, tell him not to touch me. And Bobby said, get in the floorboard, David. And that was a wild trip, but we made it anyway. And so how we got Spike is I sure didn't want another teenager, because the best of teenagers is a teenager. I mean, even the best of teenagers is still a teenager. And Ricky Haywood again, we said no, no, we're not going to take any more. Well, Rick was cutting the yard and lawnmower, and he said, Mom, what if it was me? He said, what if you and Dad divorced? Who do you think would take me? No. And Rick said, now what do you think would happen to me? And so I called Bobby's carbon plant again. And he said, well, okay, if you think we can handle it. So we called him and told him, okay, because we kept thinking we wasn't going to get no divorce. We wouldn't even think about divorce, but what if we did? Who would take Rick? Because Rick was full of himself. He was busy. So that's how we got the teenagers. And then from then on, we mostly took teenagers because they needed us the most. Chris Holland we got when he was 1 year old, and thank God I had him through Bobby Joe's death and all the way through his high school years and his 2 years of college here. And he was at home all that time. And he was 1 year old when we got him in foster care, but he could not be adopted because he could not be released. So, but he signed himself Chris Haywood Holland. That's how he signed his name. So we had Spike, and we had, then we got our Jackie, and he was a wild one. Oh, Lordy, he was wild. He was an Afro one. He was also, this shouldn't be on there if you don't show it very much, but anyway, we got him from the orphanage home, and he was a cutie pie. I mean, he was a charmer. He would not take this blue jean jacket off ever. And so one day it was off, and I took it, and I put my hand in there. Me and Bobby Joe had gone through a workshop, since we had teenagers, on drugs. Well, the drug back then was marijuana was the thing. Well, we had been on a workshop, that the sheriff's department had, where they showed it to you what it looked like. They put a little bit right in the middle, not enough to make you get it, but you know what it was like, So we knew about that stuff. Well, I took his jacket, and there's a packet like this, plumb full of them seeds. He came in from school, and I said, "Jackie, here's your jacket." He said, "Oh, my Lord." Then I was Sandra. That's before he started calling me Mama. He said, "Oh, Lord," Sandra said, "you didn't wash it, did you?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I did." And I said, "And what is this?" He said, "That's okra seed." He said, "I was going to plant it out back." I said, "Well, we're going to take this okra seed to the commode, and you're going to flush. And you're going to flush, and you're going to flush it." Oh, Lord, it cost $20. That was a lot of money back then. That was a long time ago. That was all within the first year of foster care. So, yeah, I got a story about all of them. Yeah, but we got Steve from the orphanage home too, and like I said, always he just wanted to take care of us if he could, the best he could. He'd been in a car wreck and got disabled. Not when he was with us. After he left home, he was. As a kid, he was like all of them. They got into stuff they shouldn't get into, and you had to get on to them. Kevin, he's my Kevin. And him and Bobby are here with me now. So, and I've got to watch Bobby grow up. That's been a blessing because I didn't have no little ones. All my little ones has grown up. And Mickey Dale, he was special, and he's still special. And he was here till he was 22. No, when you're special, you stay in school till you're 22. You can. And he loved it because he was the school mascot, his personality. From the time he was in junior high till he was 22, every football game, every basketball game, every baseball game, coaches always carried him with them. Well, after he got grown, Danny Ray's my wild one. Danny Ray went bad. He's in prison forever. And I just pray for his soul. And he had Tourette syndrome, but Tourette syndrome did not make him go bad. That's a choice thing, I think. I don't know. But Mick, he was living he lives home with us. And then Danny Ray, he moved to low-income housing in his own apartment. And me and Bobby would go down there and help him with it, And Danny Ray and his lived up there. And so Danny talked him into going to New Orleans to work on shrimp boat because Danny's natural sister had found him, and she was going to go and work on shrimp boat. And so Mick went with him to go on shrimp boat. And I hated it so much at first, but he's doing real good because he's my, friend. And now he's a mascot for wrestlers. And now he's married. If he's not married, she's carrying his name, so I figure she must be married. He has dyslexia, so he don't write anything. He just sends pictures. But it has a name on there, and it seems like he's doing good. He calls me every once in a while. Last time he called me, though, he said, "Mom, you know where I'm at?" I said, "Where?" He said, "Under a bridge." I said, "What are you doing under a bridge?" He said, "There's tornadoes coming through here, and if a tornado's coming, the safest place is under a bridge." He said, "I thought I'd call and tell you." Okay. Now I won't worry you under the bridge. But that was all, I guess all of her. That wasn't all our boys. We had our driveway boys. First one was Michael. Bobby Joe was going fishing 2 o'clock in the morning, and there was this old car out there, and this is boy sleeping. Bobby said, "What are you doing, boy?" He said, "Sleeping in the driveway." He said, "I'm going fishing. Go in the house, go in my house, find the couch, go to bed, and when I get home, we'll talk about this and see what this is all about." And he has a stepfather, and stepfather didn't like him. And he was sleeping in our driveway, so he was here like 3 years, and we got him through everything, you know. And then JB, the one that gave me the picture there, he was a driveway boy. And JB was here 2 years. And like I said, I don't know what I'd done without JB, because Bobby was real sick, and I had to go through all that eye stuff, you know. And of course, all my boys had to work. I mean, you know, and JB was disabled, so I think he got hurt at work or something. He was real young. Iron worker. And so, they really and truly, they've all been my salvation too. There was Mike and JB, and then there was one Darren, and Darren was in and off a driveway boy. He'd be sleeping in a driveway. Bobby always make him come in the house, and he would maybe be here a few months, and then he'd be back again, and then he'd stay a few months more. And he's dead now. I think he overdosed. I say, David was 7, we got him. He was a handful. And his mother, in order to correct him, would sit him down on the floor and sit on his head and bump up and down on his head. That's how she corrected him and his brother. And Human Services, of course, told me this. And so Human Services took him over, and that's how we got Dave. And he was 7, and when he wasn't released by his daddy. His mother had released him, but not his daddy. They both have to be released before you can adopt, back then anyway. So when he come 12, Human Services come and tell us they're going to come and get him, take him to another foster home, because his dad had released him and he could be adopted, and they felt like they needed to put him in another home for him to adjust to that family. Not whoever would adopt him, they wouldn't know who that would be, but where he would be, broke away from us. So your granddaddy's best friend's named Jerry Colley. He's a big-time lawyer here in town. And how they became friends is the 16 years that Bobby coached Little League and baseball, Jerry was the umpire, and back then everything was volunteer. So he become real good friends with him then, and then 6 years he had the Pop Warner football, Jerry did. So they was real good friends. So we went to court against Human Services, and Bob said, we got this boy that far, he's not going to move, he's not going to move. You wasn't allowed to adopt a foster child back then. You may not now, I don't know, because I don't know the rules, but back then you could not adopt a foster. But anyway, went to court against her, and we won, and they didn't give us up. The Human Service kept us. So that's how we well, really we didn't know about foster care. That was just put on us. I guess God sent, maybe, because if Rick hadn't seen it on TV, we wouldn't even known of such a thing. And then Dave, he's such a rascal. Never was mean, but mean. He could tear up Jack. And so anyway, we got to adopt him when he was 12. When he went to back then you had to go to court, and the judge said, well, would you like to take this man and this woman, just like it was a marriage thing, like to be your mother and daddy? And he said, oh, yes. So, wouldn't say he's a good Christian man, a good father, makes you feel proud. All of them, though, all of them have made me proud to some extent. Except I couldn't figure out how come Danny went bad, but I guess it just happens. Of course, your daddy was called Danny too, and he was not bad. he was Troy Daniel, and he was Tiber, and he was T-Berry, and he was Danny. He had lots of names. Tiber did. Each one's my favorite, It's not just one, it's all. And like I say with Danny, I still have a love in my heart for him. I don't understand him going bad, but I pray for his soul. I just hope and pray. It may not happen, it might, but the Gideons are real good about putting Bibles out everywhere. I'm just hoping he was brought up in church, same as the others and everything. And I'm hoping that he will find God before he leaves. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, my first grandchild was Jeremy. And when he started talking, he would pull up on the couch and point it to pictures on the wall, in the den, and he would say, Me's Ma. So I was Me's Ma until Angie started talking. See, I started taking care of Jeremy when he was 6 weeks old until he was 17 years old. His mom would not let him stay home by himself. So I had the privilege of getting to keep him during daytime, So I was Me's mom. Well, then Angie came like 2 years after him, and she changed it to Meemaw. And for somehow all the rest of them just carried on with Meemaw, and now I'm Meemaw to Jeremy too, So that's how I got the name Meemaw. Some of the grandkids called him Pawpaw, and some of them called him Granddaddy Bob. Oh, I tell you, it's wonderful. I mean, when you're a mother, it's wonderful. I mean, you delight in each child you have, But when you become a grandparent, I don't know. It's just wonderful. It's a little bit of you. It's a little bit of your husband. It's a little bit of of the people in the family. It's you can see different ways that people may do things that you didn't even know, that like maybe something my grandfather did or something my mom did or something, and I can pick it up. I'll take like Jamie. Jamie didn't climb trees, and but she didn't have to be alone either, because there was the two of you, but we were just so much alike, and I don't know, we just was, But all of my grandkids are special to me, But I think they're a gift from God. Your grandkids are all gifts from God. No matter how you get them or when you get them or what, they're still gifts from God. And then when your great grandchildren come on, then I say of them, to be a grandparent is good. To be great-grandparent, it's really good to be a great-great, to have a great-great child. That is wonderful, you know. Usually I will leave my sunroom or the kitchen, the house part, and go into my bedroom. Cut my music on real low, you know. I like music, but I cut it on real low. And then that's when I do my Bible reading. And when I went to Sunday school, then of course I would do my Sunday school lesson. But now my sister Gail brings me my Sunday school book. I get to go to church, but I don't get to go to Sunday school. And because Joy has to work every other week, you know. And I can't get in the trucks. So I go in there at night, and from about 4:30 until sometimes 11 o'clock, well, I'll read in the Bible, and then I'll do my Sunday school lesson. And then Teresa, my sister-in-law, gives every year for Christmas us her sister-in-laws called a daily Bible reading, which will be a story, will be a Bible verse and then a story that relates to the Bible verse. You know, that's good. And then I have a neighbor that lives over here that she gave me a stack like this of. It's all Bible verses, but they all have a story behind what goes with it. And I kind of like those too. The thing about it is, with Sunday school lesson, though, is you start reading what it says for you to read, and then you can't stop. You know, you just got to keep on going until you get to a stopping point. But then I'll get off to sleep, pray all day long. That's the truth. I mean, I used to not. We'd always pray when we'd eat, before we'd eat, and then at nighttime when you went to bed, that was it. But since I've gotten older, and since the family is so big, and you don't only pray for the ones that are well, you pray for the ones that are not well, you know. Just after you get older, all day long, you and the only thing I can do, and like I said, I taught Sunday school 16 years, and I was in a Bible study class for years and years and years until I couldn't go no more, you know, after I had got to Parkinson's so bad and the hip was so bad. And so the only thing I can do as far as that goes is there's a whole bunch of shut-ins that's even worse than me that can't even get out, you know. And so our minister, if he hears about them, we get a weekly newsletter, and he has their names listed. We don't know them, but they're on there by name and what's wrong with them. And so you just pray for all of them. And I try to call the ones. I have a dear little girl over there. She's probably 40, maybe not even that old. And she's going through cancer. This is her third bout of treatment. And I call her my little girl. Jamie was my little girl. So now she's my little girl, you know. And they call me Speedy. And her husband calls me Speedy. And her mother-in-law calls me Speedy. That's on kind of, I go so fast on that in the church house, getting to my seat. And they love me to death, and I love them to death, you know. But I try to call her, and she loves butterflies, so I try to find cards with butterflies on it. Or I can still draw. You know, I took art for a few years. My Aunt Jen carried me. And so if it don't have I will draw a butterfly on there for her, if it has flowers on it, you know. And that's about all I can do. Have a 93-year-old friend, been 30-year-old neighbor, and she's shut in, so I try twice a day she will call me to say, "Are you all right?" And then I will call her twice a day and say, "Are you all right?" You know. But that's about all I can do now, you know. My greatest success. Well, let's see. Well, I guess it wasn't being a cosmetologist because you went to school for that. And I was good at it. And it was a success, but I think my biggest success is somehow the other, that computer got mixed up. There's another Sandra Haywood, because I quit school in 11th grade. I got my GED when I was 30. I went to Columbia State just as a challenge to see if I could do it, just to see if I could do it. And I took a test. The first test, the professor said I failed at flunk. The professor said, "Stay after class. I don't talk to you, Sandra." I was in there with all kids in there, except me. And he said, "Do you know why you failed that test?" I said, "Why?" He said, "How long did you study?" And I told him, I got one of my boys to come in here, and we went over and over and over. He said, "You studied too much and too hard. You know," he said, "study it, get it in your mind," and I never failed another test. And so, anyway, at the end of the year, he said, "Well, you coming back next year, aren't you, for Sociology 1? I said, "I thought I was taking Sociology 1. He said, "No, you signed up for Sociology 2. So I passed it, you know. Well, somehow or the other, I don't know how, but anyway, I get this letter, and it's from the University of Tennessee and I can show you the certificate, Michigan something, University of Michigan or something, and they wanted me to teach a class on push. It says push is a class between the foster parents, natural parents, and social workers, and to try to teach everybody to get along together, because it was a lot of conflict back then, you know. And I did for 12 years, and that was, yeah, that was a success. Besides that, I went from $4 an hour to $12 an hour. Then back then, that was a whole lot of money. Yeah, a whole lot of money. And they paid for all my travel, and they paid for all my hotel and all my food. And I think that machine had another Sandra Haywood in there that had gone much further than me. Tullahoma was one of my, I guess, second class I had, and I never heard Tullahoma, you know, had never been there before, didn't know nothing about it. And of course, David was 7 and Tiva was 9, and so I had to take Tiva with me, and the boys had to stay here. Bobby, you know, get to bed. And no, it wasn't Tiva, it was Danny Ray. I had to take Danny Ray with me because he wasn't, you know, he was younger. And he was wild, and Bobby wasn't going to keep him. I had to keep him. So here I start out the door, social worker knocks on the door. She said, "I've got a boy here's a runaway from Alabama, 7 years old. He was in the back of a truck, has a picture in the newspaper. In fact, his back of the truck's got these clothes all over him. You know, took clothes to stores. He was stowaway in there." Said, "Will you keep him overnight?" Said, "We've done checked it out, and no abuse, no nothing. He just took an adventure trip." I said, "But I've got to go to Tullahoma. I got a class up there. I got to be there." Oh, there was always a professor or a psychiatrist that would teach the same time with me. We never studied together, but we had the same literature, and we always talked together. And not the same one, always different. But anyway, I had to be there. So I said, okay. Well, it was real foggy coming back from Tullahoma when that class was over. And I was in that van, and it was so foggy I had to open the door and look out to see the road to come home, you know. And I rode, and I rode, and I rode. And I was back in Tullahoma. And then I'd roll, and I rode, and I rode, and I rode, and that kid was saying, hey lady, this kid says he's adopted. Will you adopt me? And I said, no, go sit down. I said, he'd come back up there, lady, will you adopt me? No, go sit down. You know, well, we was about out of gas. The only thing we found was a little shacky place, a bunch of men in there. I think it drank, I don't know if it was a pug or what, but it did have a fitness pump out front. So I went in and told them I needed gas. They pumped it up for me. I mean, this was at night. I made that circle so hit me from 10 o'clock to 2 in the morning. I would go from Tullahoma all the way around, and I'd end up in Tullahoma. And all the way around, end up in Tullahoma. I never did figure out how that happened, you know. Finally, I got home. I was so mad at your granddad because he was asleep, and I was so mad at the boys, the teenagers, because they were asleep. I said, how could you be asleep and us not be home? They said, well, why was we not to think you wouldn't be home? We thought probably you was already home, you know. They wouldn't know I was roaming around at 2 in the morning. Well, when your mom and dad moved to Tullahoma, and me and Dottie went up there, that's when I found out what I had done. You know what I'd done, don't you? Well, you know, coming from my house to Tullahoma, you know, we go straight through and we turn Henry Horton Park and hightail it up through there, you know. When we get into Tullahoma, we, you know, go to Wendy's house and then come back the same way. Well, I was driving. When Dottie drove, Dottie said, I don't take that route. I turn in front of Kentucky Fried Chicken here, and I end up in Lewisburg, and then turn around and go down that road and end up in Columbia. Well, see, what I was doing, I would go around, but I'd hit that road. I was turning up the road to come home, and I was going back to Tullahoma. I probably was finding a home for your mother and daddy. But that's a true story. Now, I didn't make no money that time, I guarantee you. Guarantee you. I guess, well, this is regret. I guess it's a sorrow too. I guess my greatest regret is that I lost, you know, Bobby. So, well, we thought in the 60s was old back then, but in the 60s it's really young if you could live to be 80 or 100 like my aunt. But I think my greatest, that was my greatest sorrow and my greatest regret. Like I said, well, I don't guess you would call we was in love from me sitting on the porch and sneaking to hold hands every once in a while, falling in love. But actually, you know, it was just us, and that's. So I think that's my regret, and that's my sorrow, and everybody in the family said they thought I would follow him, like my buddy, you know, his wife. They had been married since they were 14, 16, and she followed him 3 months later. But I was still here. But you know, I really do think maybe Chris was still here too, so I still had somebody, you know, somebody to lean on, somebody to help me to when I needed it, to be with me in times of sorrow. He's been with me every time anything happened, you know. So I guess that's it. I don't regret anything I did when I was little or anything like that. I'm sure we put Mama through a lot, but me and Buddy, but we was just being kids. I think I'd love for them to say that you take one day at a time and you do the best you can do for yourself that day and the best you can do for somebody else if you can that day. I'd like to say that I wished they would all be church members. I wish they would all help other people, as best they can. To love each other. And my boys don't have the same blood. There's just 3 of them got the same blood, but every last one of them's got my heart, And so that's one thing I would say to them, if when you love somebody, you love them with all your heart. My favorite color now is purple, because Sister liked purple and I liked purple, and so I like purple. And my second favorite is red. It was red, but when she started liking purple, then I become a purple. Like I said, I don't know. I mean, I know, and I don't want to make you sad. But I know Jake and Jamie was like one, being twins. Well, I don't know. From the time that little girl could walk or talk, she just seemed like, I don't know, she was just like she was part me. Well, she was part me, but I mean, I love all my granddaughters, but she wrote me letters. I mean, she wrote me letters all through college. She wrote me letters after she got married. She didn't call me on the phone. She wrote me letters. I've got them all tied up in a ribbon in there. I'll give them to your mama someday, but I don't want to now because I don't want to make her sad. But they're happy letters, and notes, and I don't know. It just seemed like that she was more like me, maybe. Favorite food? Fish. My favorite food is catfish. I love it. If it's cooked right, I love it. I don't like crispy fish. But I like done fish. I like fish, and I like country ham. I love pinto beans and cornbread. And I like all sweets except chest pie. Well, they don't have the original quartet anymore. I love the Gators. I like the Gators. I like gospel music, and I like country music, both of them. I will listen to most any kind of music, but that's my favorite things. Is I love country, but I love the gospel songs too, though. And I love to hear on the radio and on TV the black quartets. They can really sing. Gosh, I think that all was a favorite, but we used me and Bobby when he was well. I don't know. I guess after Chris had left for service. I don't know, but we started taking vacations with y'all, down at Gulf Shores. And Dottie, it had done passed though, but we, and golly, we'd have a ball down there. That was great. But as far as me and Bobby by ourselves, I think Hawaii was the most beautiful. And because there's 4 islands, but we only went to 3 of them because we chose to use the time. One was called Mud Island, and they had chickens on it and pigs, and we didn't care to go to that, so we used our time in Kauai which was beautiful. Just where they had the little eyes and all that stuff. I think that was. But then too, I had some rewarding. You know, my brothers was living. All but Billy, but Buddy and Norman, Kenny and Teresa, and Gail and Frank, and me and Bobby. You know, we went on 3 vacation trips together, and that was wonderful. You know, because Buddy was in the service, but he would manage to. We went on the cruises. We went to Mexico and Kauai, is that what it's called? Mexico, and well, I think when we started out, Christmas, of course, was a big thing, but as far as I think Easter time, you know, whenever you would get all dressed up back in those days, you know, really dressed up, and the little boys wore hats and little coats and hot ties and all that kind of stuff, you know, and we would all go to sunrise service, you know. And that was always, to me, that was always really great. And then with my mama, she always had everybody at lunchtime, and they had Easter egg hunts all in her backyard. And then Mama and Papa always had supper down at their house, and all of us would go down there. And Easter was a big thing, and it became a big thing over here, you know. Y'all remember your mother and daddy would bring y'all down here for a long time. And y'all had the same Easter basket every year, you know. I think that. Now, Christmas is a fun time because that is the one time that everybody will all seem to get together, you know, even the one that don't come at Easter. It seems like it. But my biggest day of my life, I think, was my birthday. That was unreal. You know how many people was there?
Over 100, wasn't it?
Yeah, that book had the names on there. According to the book, it was 140 people. Well, I think, no, that's not right. So I took the names, the numbers, and put them on paper, and I come out with 139. So it's 139 or 140. Grandmother Moore's house always a big thing, you know, with all of her kids and grandkids and nieces, nephews, and everybody, you know. And Thanksgiving, I don't know, Thanksgiving is a really good time too. Everybody can get together and be thankful for what we all got. And it seems to me like if when families get big, you know, they have to separate because everybody has to work and they got to find work somewhere. So it seemed like Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving and when people die, it's on time that the whole group comes together. And that's why I was so totally surprised at my birthday. I could not even, I mean, I had great nephews and nieces I had never seen before, some of them, you know. 85. Come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when I think back on memories, though, when you get old, you go back to remember me and Buddy climbing them trees, because nobody can believe, you know, that kids would do that and could do that, but we did and we could. It's that when we moved when Dad went into the CBs, we had to sell the house on the hill. Mom moved down into, you know, Tuscumby, and me and Buddy found us a row of trees, and I got stuck in the middle, and I couldn't go no further, and I was hollering and say, Buddy, 2 years younger than me. Buddy's hand walked all the way across there, you know, and jumped down. It was a sailor boy, was on leave. We was leaving then where the army people, the mothers and the mothers or the wives and kids lived, you know, what the husbands was in the service. Well, Buddy ran, this sailor boy, he climbed up there and got me. He took me under his arm, got me down. And this, don't put this on this, for sure. Buddy made friends then that wasn't just me and Buddy, you know, because we lived in this complex, lots of kids. Buddy made friends with lots. So him and these boys would climb in a tree, and I was no, you go down, you go home. No, I'm climbing this tree. He said, I told you to go home. And, no, I'm climbing this tree. I kept on climbing. All at once, something hit me on the head. He peed on my head. He did. That's the truth. Did you know my brother called me the week before that he died, a week before. And you know, every one of those members was with him still the same as me. And Norma said he told that tale over and over again. And they said, well, didn't you tell your mother? And I said, no, I didn't want him to get no spanking, you know. But I kept climbing that tree, you know, and he didn't do it again. But I guess I was probably 9. No, I was more than that. I was like 11 by then. So he would have been 9, too old to pin on somebody's head.
That's Mom, Pa, agree.
We'd really go. Ma, she washed near every day, hung her clothes out on the line, and the video came that way. Ate up Pa's old red flannel underwear, that wouldn't crack. Said I could get rid of that doggone train.
So he tied
it to the road track. Train with a choo-choo-choo. That go back. With those old red flannel underwear, way down that doggone train.
Yeah.
I still messed it up because I said train.
That's fine. That's all right. Good.
Well, of course, I loved all my mother, my father, and all. But now, my mother, you know, y'all's great-grandmother, Sue Moore, she was, she was just a person of pure love for everybody and everything. And I think she instilled that, you know, in me and in her other children. I think any mother does, but mother was just what you call unique. Because like I said, my dad had a problem until the last 20 years of his life. And my mom, she loved him enough, she stuck with him with his problem. And she saw him through 25 years of good Christian living. So, you know, so I think my mother really was and she with my boys. If they're gonna talk about anybody, they talk about Grandmother Moore, you know. So I think maybe she was really what helped me to be whatever I am today. And when you get this old, there's not too much you can do. But yet still do a lot, you know. They call me Sandy. Oh, I'm Sandy over there. I'm Sandy to my friend. I got lots of names, you know. So I'm Sandy, I'm Sandra, and I'm Miss Sandra, and I'm San, and I'm Mama San, and me Mama and Mama, and Speedy. I got lots of names. So I guess I've earned them all.